Good evening and welcome to DarkHour Paranormal. I am your host tonight, Michael Roser. And I want to begin by thanking all of you for joining us this evening. We have a very special time ahead of us tonight. Folks, in the studio with me, I have Lon Strickler of the Fortean Society and Phantoms and Monsters. And I know that you folks know who this individual is. He's very insightful. He's been around the block longer than I can even express in the regard to paranormal research, cryptids, and everything under the esoteric umbrella. Folks, I am incredibly excited to be speaking with Lon personally this evening. He did come back. He is a return guest. He came on in July, along with two more of his teammates, Manny Navarrete and Tobias Wayland, and we had a fantastic roundtable discussion. But tonight, I wanted to kind of bring Lon Strickler in as a singular entity, and we'll have this one-on-one discourse and get a little deeper into his knowledge, his research, and his experiences. Before I do that, for those of you who are not familiar with Lon, I'm going to read a quick bio, and please check out all of the promotional material, and I will read that at the end of his bio. And it's in the description. So go and check out everything that he's doing with Phantoms and Monsters blog, Arcane Radio. And I will, again, touch upon this as we go forward. Lon Strickler is a Fortean researcher, author, and publisher of the syndicated Phantoms and Monsters blog. He began the blog in 2005, which has steadily grown in popularity and is read daily by tens of thousands of paranormal enthusiasts, investigators, and those seeking the truth. His research and reports have been featured on hundreds of online media sources. Several of these published reports have been presented on various television segments, including the History Channel's Ancient Aliens, SYFY's Paranormal Witness, Fact or Faked, Paranormal Files, and Destination America's Monsters and Mysteries in America. He has been interviewed on several radio broadcasts, including multiple guest appearances on Coast to Coast AM. Again, you can find him at phantomsandmonsters.com and Arcane Radio, which is now on YouTube, and I will be providing that link in the description after the show, so everybody can very easily go and check out some of the fantastic material that Lon has released even recently. So without further ado, folks, as we say here at DarkHour Paranormal, I'm going to bring Lon Strickler on, and we're going to have one hell of an evening. How's it going, Lon? Thanks for being here. It's great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming back. You know, some people get shy, and you seem to have the will of steel to endure this another hour and a half. So again, I appreciate you for being here.
I'm kind of used to it.
Yeah. Well, you are a very interesting individual in this field and well sought out for your experiences and research. So again, I'm very honored. Let's get right into it here. Let's get right into this. All right. So I understand that you have been aware of your intuitions since you were very young. How did you discover this? Was there a defining event that brought you to this conclusion, or was it a gradual culmination of experiences?
Well, I always knew something was different. I didn't really understand it. My parents, I don't think, even knew anything about it from the very beginning onward. And like I told you before the show, I used to spend a lot of time on the Gettysburg Battlefield. I just lived right down the road from there. And during the summers, I used to go out there. I was into history and Civil War and all that. Even at a young age, I was about 9. And I was out there one afternoon. And I was in an area of the battlefield known as the Valley of Death. And that's between the Little Round Top, Devil's Den, and the wheat field. Mm. And, it was very active during the second day of the battle at Gettysburg. And as I was on the road, small road that goes back up into the Round Tops, I all of a sudden, it just like a big TV screen opened up in front of me. Frankly, I mean, that's what it felt like to me. And I just automatically just started hearing gunfire, cannon fire I was smelling gunpowder, hearing screams, seeing apparitions. I mean, all my senses were heightened. And this occurred for about 30 seconds and then just suddenly stopped. And, you know, I'm there on my bike, dumbfounded what had just happened. And that was kind of where it really started at. You know, it's not like I lived in a haunted house or anything like that. You know, I had really no knowledge of spirits or, you know, anything to that effect. Though I did know I could sense certain things. Like I felt the energy of a spirit or you know, just some type of energy. It was just, it's hard to explain. But anyway, after that, and when I, you know, knew what could happen, I started experiencing a few things here and there. And I've experienced a lot of things on that battlefield over the years. You know, I used to sneak out there at night and camp out. I mean, you know, back then you could get on there, you can't now. But we used to get, you know, I used to take a friend or two with me, and I used to freak them out. But I kind of knew the areas and knew where the energy and stuff were. So, yeah, that's kind of what I did. And, you know, I did that the whole way through school. And when I got older and I moved right after high school, I moved down to Maryland. And I was, you know, I was doing haunting cases down there. I was even coming up to Pennsylvania doing cases too. And that's kind of where it got to.
Now, all the time that you spent on the Gettysburg Battlefield, people that have gone out there have sort of a divided opinion about what might actually be going on in respect to the reason some of this activity exists. For example, some say it's a residual thing. Others say there's sentience behind it. Of all your time spent there, what do you really feel is happening there in respect to that? Are they replaying these same memories, or is this more of an intentional existence on the other side in that place?
No, it's both. I mean, you do run across both. There'll be times when, and people that watch the videos will occasionally see, like, it's something like, they will see like a bunch of soldiers and it just kind of rewinds. This thing will walk somewhere, then it'll come back and rewind. And he'll do it within a minute or two. Yeah, that's residual, and that is, there's a lot of that there, but there is a lot of sentiment as well. I have seen and have been told by other people as well, but I have seen actual soldiers just show up, the apparitions, especially around Devil Den. I've seen two that just suddenly showed up and talked to people who had communicated with a few of them as well. You know, I talked to a ranger one day, and he was telling me that he was around the same area where I had that initial incident. He was telling me that a woman and her friend came up to him and asked him why they didn't know anything about a reenactment going on around Devil's Den. He said, well, there's no reenactment. Well, she said, I just talked to one of the soldiers. I mean, so that does happen. That happens a lot. Yeah, the place it's definitely imprinted. There's no doubt about that. And it's not just on the battlefield. I mean, the whole area, even as far out where I'm at. I mean, there's a lot of spirit energy around here. You know, when I moved back up here back in 2016, now I was living in Hanover, and I live outside of Hanover now, but it's between Hanover and Gettysburg. But, you know, when I moved back to town from living down in Maryland for 40 years, I was getting calls like crazy for hauntings. And in fact, in about a 3-year period, I did 26 investigations.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And some of them were in the same areas as well. So people people in different houses were experiencing very similar activity. So, it's it's that kind of vibe around here. There's a lot of hauntings around this whole area, this whole region.
Now, when you come up to something like Gettysburg, or you go to a haunted house, and let's say you brought a clairvoyant into that sort of atmosphere. A lot of times they'll tell you that they're picking stuff up off the walls, off the environment, that they're in, which might indicate some sort of residual existence. Sometimes there is no sentience attached to that, but it's almost as if the material around whatever the event itself are record keepers of sorts. And the reason that people have sort of proposed is that it has to do with vibration. I'm curious what your thoughts might be on that. Does it have to do with the type of material? Could it possibly be the geographic location that influences that sort of capturing of energy? What do you think it might be?
When I say imprint, it doesn't really matter what the material is. If there is an event that is strong enough and has a lot of energy behind it, it'll imprint. I mean, I'm an intuitive. I don't say I'm not a medium, but I'm able to pick up on the energy. Now, occasionally I can see it through my mind's eye. And in fact, the way I detect it is I start seeing certain colors in my mind's eye. It's a strange, I've only run across a few people that are able to do that. But I can usually get a pretty good sense of what is going on. But it depends how strong it is, and if it is an actual spirit that is letting off energy, it's just not a residual. I try to communicate with it, not verbally, but kind of with my mind. Intuitively, and occasionally you can get a pretty good idea of what's going on. And of course, I always research a lot of stuff too after I'm done with it, and it will usually give me an idea of what's really going on. Of course, I was trained to remote view as well about a decade ago, and I have used that in the past in a couple of long distance, hauntings and, investigations.
How effective was that for you?
Pretty good. Yeah,
Yeah?
it was effective. Yeah, I tell you, it depends on the people you're working with. There's different ways of doing it. I was doing it with a monitor. We were actually on Skype. She was in Wales and I was here, and we were doing the communication there. So I mean, it worked out. She'd be on the location, or we'd have a location here in the United States. We'd have somebody else there, and we still do the RV. So it's a tool to help you to get clues or ideas more than anything else. You don't really pick up directly with the spirit. Sometimes you will. Now, I'm because I've had psychic attacks during these sessions. I mean, I had one time where I literally was cut from the top of my sternum down to my belly.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
That's laceration.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it was a case we had in Prince Edward Island at Charlottetown, and the woman was experiencing a lot of crazy activity in her home. And it was her parents' home, and they had passed away, and she was being assaulted at night while she was in bed. And we actually did the RV, and I was sensing a lot of crazy stuff. I mean, I didn't really know what was going on until I started talking to her and trying to get a little more information. I could tell she was suppressing a lot of information. So we had done several RVs, but eventually we got to one where she was this thing was out of the house at another location where I got a better read of it. And what it was her father's spirit. And he had apparently been assaulting her as a child, sexually assaulting her. And
Okay.
she kind of repressed that. And this thing got upset with me, and he literally attacked me. I mean, he literally attacked me. Now, some people don't think that's possible, but it does happen. I mean, I
Hmm.
swear, it's almost like this thing came right through the computer at me. And I had a somewhat of a, it wasn't real deep, but it was a laceration. I've also had bruised ribs from a psychic attack as well. So,
Well,
people talk about that. It does happen.
well, this is really interesting, and I'm glad you brought this up because there's been a lot of discussion in the way of differentiating a demonic spirit from a human entity that's passed on. Because there have been so many reports of what people have known to be human entities acting in a demonic fashion and having such a heavy negative influence on our third dimensional space. Is there any way that we can really separate the two, or once you get on the other side, do you kind of culminate with your vibrational energies and you attract whatever entities towards you to kind of bolster that? Next thing you know, you have some sort of maybe like a darkness behind you that again resonates with maybe what kind of vibration you carry, or is it something else that happens that allows human spirits to sort of pose as these demonic forces?
Well, first of all, I don't believe in demons.
Okay.
Evil is evil as far as I'm concerned. Um, you know, the, the demon is kind of used as a religious term for evil, and it always goes back to Satan and all this. I don't buy into all the dogma, and I have run across some pretty bad actors, on the
Mm.
spiritual level, and if a person passed away who remained on our earth plane and they were a pretty bad person in life, they're going to be the same way in death. Now, the fact that everybody seems to think it's a demon is just crazy. It's usually either an energy, a life force that has remained, and that they're just evil incarnate, or that they're just a regular spirit just trying to get somebody's attention. And most of the time, most hauntings are like that. That the spirit, the energy is just trying to get the attention of the living. They remain here for a number of reasons, but it's usually either that they don't realize they're dead and they're trying to get people's attention, or that they died suddenly and feel like they have unfinished business, or they want others to know where and why they're there, and and that, I believe, just by what I have experienced with those energies on other levels that seem to come back sometimes, but it's mostly those that are stuck here, and they're just seeking attention.
Mm. I like that perspective. I really do, because like you, I don't necessarily believe that there are demonic entities in the way that people necessarily describe. Again, maybe they're not even singularities. There's a possibility that there's a legion of energy behind it. But again, we see these consistent reports of human entities that are wreaking havoc in a poltergeist fashion. It makes you wonder if there's not some sort of, or if I should say, it's more simple than categorizing, based on these behaviors. If evil is evil, the darkness is the darkness, and you're either sitting there or you're sitting in the light. Obviously, we are a pillar of the in between and have the ability to express both, or any thing on the spectrum, so to speak. So that's really interesting to hear you say. Moving forward here, if you had never encountered the Sykesville monster while fishing in Maryland many years ago, do you think cryptozoology would still be a central part of your life today?
Well, that isn't the only encounter I had. I had an encounter back in '88 as well of another entity, another cryptid. But that's what started it. The 81 encounter with the Bigfoot was, it kind of sparked my interest. I had just been doing hauntings and such. Basically, that's all I did.
Right.
And when I was out there that day fishing and I saw that thing, I became curious, and I wanted to find out what it was, because I had heard Bigfoot, but I didn't know what the hell I was looking at, and
Right.
I wanted to find out a little bit more about it. So yeah, that kind of got me interested, and that's where I went.
That's interesting, mate. It's really interesting. What this is, again, another one of those questions that's been floating around recently that I have been asking people, because every perspective that comes back is a little bit more unique, although in respect to opinion, there is some sort of consistency. So I'd like to ask you this. Have you ever observed any connection between extraterrestrials and cryptids?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I tell you, this investigation that we've been working on with the Chicago winged humanoids, people call it Chicago Mothman, Chicago Phantom. We had an incident. More recently, we've had incidents around the airport, around O'Hara, that may be connected. We had a encounter back in Rosemont, which is very nearby O'Hara. It's a neighborhood east of O'Hara.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a incident where a woman saw a winged entity, like what people have been seeing, and there was a small gray with it and two female humanoids, basically. And what happened was there was a sudden flash of blue light, and the alien being and the two females just suddenly disappeared, and then this thing took off. So I've been involved with alien abduction and alien encounters for quite a while now, and I have people that I have talked to about this, and the blue light is pretty indicative of a portal either opening or closing for whatever reason. Now, we don't know why that is, but there's usually a blue light associated with that type of thing. But that was the first, and that was within the past year. I mean, that's the first time we had any type of alien connection with these winged cryptids now, or these winged humanoids.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we've had two more incidents since then. These came to Manuel, and he had reported to us there was a UFO sighting above the graveyard that's actually on the property of O'Hara. It's called Rest Haven Cemetery, a real small one, but it's right at the airport, right in the airport property and near some of the cargo areas. And this cargo worker was out on a smoke break right across the road from this cemetery, and he said a UFO, oval-shaped bright UFO, suddenly appeared above the cemetery, and something ascended up into it that looked like a humanoid. Now, he didn't say anything about wings or anything, but that was a bit strange. I mean, first of all, how many humanoids are standing in, or humans, let alone humans, standing in a graveyard at 1 o'clock in the morning, ascending up into a UFO? That kind of, and of course, with that, you start thinking, there've been a lot of sightings of these winged humanoids around the airport recently, and you start trying to put two and two together and trying to figure, well, maybe there's association. Later on, in around the same area of the airport, in the cargo area, there was a sighting. A truck driver had a sighting of a gray-like alien that was walking along one of the roads in that area. So, I tell you, O'Hara's got a lot of strange stuff going on. I don't know what the deal is about the airport. There are a lot of airports that have a lot of strange activity, but O'Hara seems to, it's known for UFO activity anyway. And we have talked to people I've talked to people who have seen apparitions and all kinds of paranormal happenings there.
Mm-hmm. You know, Manny's been very generous to occasionally keep me in the loop when it comes to some of these reports. And I do have to say that the sheer amount of sightings and experiences that are coming forward to folks like you from the O'Hare Airport, it's just unreal. It really makes you wonder why there's a mecca of activity happening. And again, like you're mentioning here, it's not just one thing or the other. There's a lot of different things happening. And I'll get into that with you in a little bit, because I had a couple of questions, but I'm glad you brought it up. Let's talk about your blog here. What inspired? Well, no, I'm going to warn you. This is a long-winded one, so hang tight. What inspired you to publish the blog on your website, Phantoms and Monsters, in 2005? Was it a natural course in respect to your research? And how did you make the transition from blogger to syndicated author? Do you believe a researcher who has an experience or encounter with a cryptid has an advantage over someone purely intellectualizing their research?
Well, I started a blog after writing for another website for about a year. And, some of the stuff I was writing about was personal investigations I had done over the years. And the guy who had the website said, man, you ought to start writing on your own. I hadn't even thought about writing a blog or anything. I was not a writer, never really thought I was much of a writer. I hated reading. Be honest with you, it wasn't my best subject in school. But anyway, but I had all these cases that I had worked on personally. I talked to people about all kinds of stuff over the years. So I just said, okay, I'll just go ahead and start a blog. So I just started a blog and started putting stuff down. And that's kind of where it started off at. It was 2005. It really didn't start connecting until about 2008. That's when it kind of started to get out there a bit more. And it was kind of frustrating at first, but when it started getting subscribers more and more, and I had all this other stuff. So in the meantime, I was getting reports from people. I was looking into a few things personally. The progression in the books, I don't know. That was kind of a spur of the moment thing. I just started taking a lot of the stuff I had written about on the blog and started putting in a book form. And I did the first 5 volumes of the Encounters books, but they're out of print now. I pulled them, and I've written 3 books since that. So, of course, when all this stuff started in Chicago, I definitely had to write about that. And, I decided as well to go into some of the alien abduction reports and people I had dealt with for years. And I did a book about that as well.
In respect to the abduction cases, we had over on Third Phase of Moon recently, and also reviewed on Third Phase, a gentleman named Kenneth Pass. And his story is probably the most left field story that I've ever heard, but in a very positive sense. There's a lot of detail behind it. The gentleman feels very convicted about what he's conveying. And yet there are elements of boarding a craft as a youth with other youths, time traveling, him actually driving the craft, going back to certain places in time, such as Romania, or I'm losing. I can't remember the other spot that he went off top. It'll come to me. Either way, in history, and actually engaging, not necessarily voluntarily, but sort of circumstantially, in certain battles and conflicts with the indigenous people of that time, and has come back after this incredible experience, which encompassed everything from molestation to technological manipulation. He said that he had died at one point, was brought back, or was reborn as this person somehow. What is the scope of the abductees' experiences that you usually encounter? Are they really fantastic in this way, or are they more sort of streamlined? I went on the ship, they did something to me, I came back, I don't remember anything, I have missing time.
Well, it depends. I mean, there's all different types of abductions. When they started earlier and started coming out in the mainstream, it was usually someone or a group or a couple being abducted,
Mm-hmm.
either just like Betty and Barney Hill,
Yep.
abducted from the car and taken up into a craft, and they'd be in the craft, they'd be shown things, they'd see certain entities that usually looked all the same. There'd be experimentation. There'd be a lot of different things going on. And, that kind of evolved over the years. I started getting reports of people being abducted at home more than anything after that. And a lot of that eventually came into where people were experiencing multiple type of entities, 3 or 4 or 5 different entities during the abduction or wherever they were taken at. And also, more recently, most of these entities have been mostly a human hybrid of some type, even grown up. I mean, it seems to be more sophisticated now than it used to be. People are taken from their homes through either portals or, somehow dematerialized, taken through a portal. I have worked on several cases, and the portal thing seems to be probably the most prevalent. There's a lot of people that have lost time that just don't really know what happened. Most abductions really don't get into the nitty gritty until years later when they actually have some type of recollection of it. I have found that regressive hypnosis may work to a point, but it's not always that successful. And I think a lot of people are kind of coaxed into embellishing somehow during those regressions.
Interesting.
I just don't buy into them as much as some people, say, how they work. I have actually been at the regressions for hauntings and such, or near death or something. But as far as the alien goes, I just don't really buy into a lot of it. I think they go into the hypnotic state with an idea of what they're going to say. To be honest with you,
I understand what you mean. Sort of going in there with not the expectation, but this is what's on your mind. This is maybe playing on the subconscious aspect of it. I think I understand what you're saying with that. That's very curious. I mean, we could go into that a little bit more, but I'd like to just kind of keep moving forward because I have some other questions for you here. Maybe we'll come back to that.
okay.
Now, in respect to let me try this again. In relation to your experience with the first sighting you had, there was a lot of authority presence at some point, and you weren't able to really go back there. You kept being told to go home, go away, not be around. For what reason do you think bodies of authority don't want us to know about cryptids such as Bigfoot? I've always been under the impression one reason may be because they're as uncertain as we are with what they're dealing with, and perhaps the way, okay, so how do I want to say this? So what they'll do in that ignorance, so to say, is they'll surround the area and they'll block it off, similar to the way that the Utah monolith was treated once it was first discovered and reported on. Everybody in authority was there blocking it off. Do you think that there is a threat to what we're not knowing about some of these cryptids, the way that governments may be acting upon that?
I think they're perfectly aware of the act of what's going on. Like in my instance where I saw this thing, made the report, there had been an early report that day from somebody downriver from there who had seen it. And by that time, the authorities were alerted, but I think there was something else behind it. That area where I saw it at, the Baltimore, Washington area, for people that are familiar with the whole region, there are a lot of government facilities around there that are unmarked. People have no idea what it's there for, what they're doing. And I was made aware of later on of government involvement, possible government involvement with Bigfoot, and actually housing these creatures to some degree. And the fact that even back then when I had mine in 81, I think something was going on to get that response. When I came back and, after I was shooed away by the state police officer, and I came back an hour later, and there were people everywhere. I mean, they had the dogs and, guys with dogs going through everything. There was a big white tent set up. They were doing stuff across the river where I'd seen it at. There were government vehicles, the black Wagoneers they used to ride back then. There were state, county police, even heard helicopters. I mean,
wow,
they were there for a reason. They just don't do that. They don't do that now. So there was something that had happened federally or government wise that caused that response. I have talked to several people I talked to at least one who was there, who was a police officer. He verified everything, but he didn't know why they responded that way either. That's kind of like the big secret. Now, there's no record of this happening. None of the enforcement agencies in the area have any record of it. And when I was supposedly supposed to talk to the TV stations in the Baltimore area about it, after I contacted them and told them what I saw, they didn't want to talk to me afterwards. So they were informed. It was pretty obvious they were informed not to talk, not to say much about it. So, it's kind of like the 40-year mystery to me. I mean, I just, I really don't know why there was a response. I've got an idea why, and from things I've learned over the years, but, I think it has something to do with the government involvement with the creatures or the phenomena itself.
Let's put this one to rest. This is something that has been proposed many times, and maybe there's some truth to it, but personally it just seems too fantastic. Are any of these cryptids in your research coming from some sort of facility where they escaped inadvertently just out of nowhere, and maybe they weren't supposed to be out? Are they escaped creatures or some sort of hybrids from a government experiment out in the woods?
Well, that's what I'm talking about. That's what you're saying? Okay. That may very well be what's going on. I have heard of at least one other instance from a retired Air Force officer who was at Edgewood, near the proving grounds up in Harford County. That's north of Baltimore. And apparently the information he got, and from the things he saw, there may have been an escape of several of these things. And it's interesting because if you go back and look into the reports of Bigfoot reports in Harford and Baltimore County, especially the northern parts up by the Pennsylvania line, there were a lot of sightings around that time. So I believe that a lot of them started heading north. It may have gone into Pennsylvania. Now,
interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the Susquehanna River, on the western edge of the Susquehanna River, has been inundated with Bigfoot sightings over the years. And, there's always been a bit of a history of these creatures showing up there, but recent years, it's been a lot of them. And I think it has to go back with what happened at Edgewood, or to a point. I think it's related to that. So I don't know exactly what happened. I don't know what's going on now, but when you start interviewing various people, and then they start looking like there's a connection, then you got to wonder if how much the government is actually involved in this.
Well, so you're saying it really does have merit, and I understand that there are black projects or secret, quiet projects, so to say, that do work with hybridization and manipulation of DNA. Of course, what I'm saying is merely speculation in some respects, but there is some evidence out there that they do exist. So I guess it would be possible. I think maybe the way that people convey that aspect of the theory, it's sort of it's just not conveyed correctly. I think there's a lot of flippancy behind that sort of thing. So it's interesting to hear you say it in this way, and it's a lot more grounded. So I appreciate that. Across the board, how many cryptids have biological indicators such as the identification of sex, juveniles, or other attributes? I think you just mentioned something about migration in a sense, where they're moving north. So are there biological components that we are seeing in many of these cryptids, or is it only a few that we've really been able to pin down and say that there's something there?
The Bigfoot, of course, we have seen some indication that there may be some migration. There have been thoughts about that. I don't think they doing a hibernation or anything like that. Because of maybe food or some other reason, they may move to between states and such. I think, and also we've been investigating the upright canine dogman phenomenon in Pennsylvania for several years now, and there's some indication that they may very well migrate also down south. It just seems like that corridor, the Appalachia corridor, between Pennsylvania, Maryland, West Virginia, and southwestern Virginia, seems to have some kind of correlation where they move through the valleys or through the ridges of these mountain ranges. But we have no real proof of that.
Right.
But these areas seem to be pretty heavy as far as reports and such, especially with these upright canines. I mean, central Pennsylvania has been a hot spot the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, we've got some pretty remarkable sighting reports. And of course, there was like a flat back in the 60s and 70s in Western Maryland, particularly in Frederick County, where there were 7 documented encounters and sightings of these upright canines as well. So, they seem to kind of move into areas for certain periods of time. Like with most cryptids, I believe, and this is my personal thought, that there's some interdimensional aspect to this. I think most cryptids can move in and out of different realities. Even the winged humanoids, I think that's pretty well given right now. They're not indigenous. They're kind of coming in for whatever reason through some type of portal or, some way to move in and out between different dimensions. I think Bigfoot is able to do that, or either to cloak to a degree where, we've gotten a lot of these Glimmer Man reports of these beings kind of looking like, the predator being, we don't know what that's all about, but this may be some type of mechanism for cloaking, and it may not just be Bigfoot; it may be other cryptids as well. It's all speculative, a lot of conjecture, but we're trying to connect a lot of this, and it's going to be years yet, unless something just turns up where we get a really good clue or something factual, even a body or something that shows up to where we can make a more defined theory or actually fact about what's going on.
There's a lot of focus on the physical evidence side of things in the field today, yet there's a right brain interpretation too when you talk about experience. How important is it to have this left brain evidence, this physical evidence that we have when there's so many people having sort of intangible experiences, but able to report such emotion and how it impacted them?
Well, I mean, the anecdotal evidence is important. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And of course, 99% of what we get is anecdotal. Very rarely we get any physical evidence or any physical evidence that amounts to much.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we get photographs, films, and that's about it. So we get some hair samples here and there. But I honestly, unless there's a body or something to that degree, we're not really going to know.
Has anything come out of the hair samples at all? I know there have been some that have been collected. Anything surface?
Well, you hear a lot of different things. I was privy to to a big project that happened several years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I heard a lot of different things. I don't know how factual they were, but the evidence that I was told showed that there's definitely a human connection with Bigfoot. Now, I don't know how far that really went. I don't know how much of that was just covered up and kept quiet. I do believe that there is a genetic connection between humans and Bigfoot. But then again, if there is a genetic connection, and that you think that they may be interdimensional, what's that all about? I mean, is that something that we had the ability to do at some point eons ago?
Right.
Something that we forgot, and who knows? I mean, it's all a big question now. It's the one thing about this field, cryptids in general, is you got to be open-minded.
Yeah.
I mean, because if you're just out there spelunking around trying to find physical evidence in a physical Bigfoot, you're going to be disappointed eventually. I mean, if you're out there looking for it, 99 out of 100 chances, you're not going to get anything. Most reports are just incidental. Something happens without, any intention. So, yeah, I think we're going to, I think we're going to get better evidence as time goes by, as technology gets better.
Mm-hmm.
I've said for years now, when quantum computing becomes more mainstream, I think a lot of questions are going to be answered.
I happen to agree with you on that. Given where things seem to be going consciousness-wise as well, I feel that there are a lot more people out there who are open-minded, even to the extent that, let's say you started a new job, there might be a handful of folks who have at least heard about Bigfoot or seen something on YouTube about UFOs. You can actually have a superficial conversation with folks at, the very least these days, whereas 20, 30 years ago, before the advent of the internet, it was just impossible. There was so much more resistance to this information in this field. So, I think things will be changing too, and we're going to see the result of that in the upcoming years. But going back to the past a little bit, if we were once in balance with these esoteric creatures of the woods with respect to our indigenous ancestors, in your opinion, what happened to our awareness or connectivity to these beings between the time of our ancient ancestors and now? Where did we lose our knowledge and purported synergistic interactions?
Technology. Life
Okay.
became easier.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it became more finite. I mean, if you were looking for an answer, you didn't have to go out looking for it. It's kind of, you open a book or go on the computer or whatever you want to, however you want to do it. Mm-hmm. Back then, it had to be through word of mouth, or you had to go find it yourself.
Yeah.
I think more people are in tune with nature and, in every degree. And, you look back at to the indigenous people, the Indians, Native Americans, they had a real strong connection spiritually with nature.
Right.
And you know, for the most part, when you talk about cryptids with them, they look at it as a spirit more so than a corporeal being. And you know, if you talk to elders and such from different tribes, they'll still tell you that, you know, you're able to see it because it wants you to see it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it manifests to look like a corporeal being, but they're spirit. So
We've heard that a lot too. And, you know, you keep bringing up the interdimensional angle with all this, which is, again, one of those hot topics right now that people are really discussing. Do you feel that if that's the case, that these beings are using portals to come in and out of this existence, do you think that they are natural portals, or do you think it's something that they're able to generate with their own energy?
see, that we don't know. You know, I think they may be natural and they're able to detect them. You know, there have been instances where I have talked to people who have seen a cryptid just literally vanish, just like with the Chicago winged beings.
Mm-hmm.
We've had 2 instances where witnesses saw them flying and just suddenly disappeared like they went through an invisible doorway. I've talked to Bigfoot investigators who have actually, you know, seen a Bigfoot and tracked it and were right behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing just disappeared. And when they got to the point where it disappeared, there's just no way it was hiding anywhere. It just, you know, it just vanished. It took off, you know. So, you know, I think that there may be natural portals, natural tears in the fabric, you know. You know, you talk about this 911 thing, you know, where people are supposedly disappearing in parks and such. Well, you know, there's a good possibility, I believe, that they may be just disappearing through natural portals.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are thousands of people that disappear every year without a trace. You know, there's a lot of different possible reasons why that may happen. But if they're standing beside you and they're not there a second later, well, that's a pretty good indication something just happened.
Irrational deduction.
Yeah, they went through something, you know.
Oh, God. That's funny. I have Patrick Vaughn here, who is actually, he is a Bigfoot investigator, to put it lightly, over where he is. And he's asking, have you ever worked with a tracker or primitive skills expert while investigating Bigfoot before?
Years ago, I did. You know, that's when I was doing actual on-site investigations and such. A lot of it's, you know, it's not really easy to get somebody to do that. Now, I was lucky enough this individual had has Shawnee, you know, he was a Shawnee, you know, he was, you know, it was part of his indigenous background. And he was able, it's hard to say what he was able to do. I think he had certain intuitive abilities and the abilities to kind of connect with these things. Mm-hmm. He said he was a tracker, but quite frankly, I never remember him coming across anything while I was with him. So, you know, other than that, no, I hadn't, but that was the only instance I'd been.
Fascinating, mate. Fascinating. I mean, you know, you have to be out there for a very long time for some people to catch some evidence. And I think that there is a bit of adventure that goes into this, but there are a lot of folks who believe that they're connected to these, especially Bigfoot. When they go out into the woods, they feel that they're maybe a part of that energy. I've had folks tell me they even use Reiki before walking into a field, kind of raising their vibration on purpose to allow whatever creature in that respect that's there to feel them, because they understand that there is some sort of extrasensory perception sensitivity that these beings exhibit.
Oh, I think they possess that. I think they have certain abilities to do that. I mean, how many times, I don't know how many times I have heard where somebody saw a Bigfoot and they just suddenly became paralyzed. Basically, they couldn't do anything. They couldn't grab a camera. You know, that's like this with this stuff in Chicago. You know, there have been people who just said, I never even thought about grabbing my camera and taking a photograph of this thing. You know, it's like these things turn on something to let you know that, yeah, you see me, but that's all you're going to do. You know, we've had that with people who have had upright canine encounters, even hunters. I mean, guys that are armed walk up on one of these things, and it's like, I'm not going to, you know, not to shoot it, not to do anything, but just back away. I had a guy at a tree stand. He was deer hunting, had a 30-06 with him, and this thing sat down on the ground in front of him for about 10 minutes, and he just never took a shot at it. He said, it never came to my mind to do that. So, you know, you hear all kinds of crazy stuff, but I tell you, I think these beings do have an ability to kind of lighten a moment, basically, to kind of get, you know, to kind of take away a lot of the shock, and, you know, so to just not do anything, you know, just, you know, you see me, I accept that, but just back away and just be cool about it.
Some sort of disengaging mechanism on the energetic level, possibly.
Yeah.
And it could be just the vibration that they carry is, you know, affecting yours in that manner too. But I would lean towards it being more intentional, and that they're aware of that ability as well. Because
well, yeah, I've had witnesses say that they felt a lot of confusion, you know, dread, like, you know, if they did something to piss this thing off, it was going to react to them. But many times they'd have that state of confusion as to kind of doubting themselves as to what they really saw. And I think that works into it as well.
Do you think that by and large we live in a predatory universe?
Now, when you say predatory universe, what do you mean?
Or do you think that there's more of a synergistic relationship between each of us as living beings, you know, or is there really just this chain of hunting and consuming and dominating, even from the aspect of cryptids?
Maybe, but I don't think it's probably as strong as it may have been at one time.
That's very curious. Okay. This is, I mean, I'll get stuck on this for a while, but I wanted to ask you a little bit about the recent Mothman sightings that have been happening over in the area of O'Hare. Now, you mentioned a little bit about disappearing and perhaps, you know, slipping into another portal, but are there any recent accounts of Mothman sightings in Chicago? I would say specifically, because I've been focused on that area. I'm curious of Mothman appearing or just dematerializing right in front of somebody. Do they ever leave a trace, like maybe an imprint where they were standing, any physical evidence that they were there at all?
Not that I can think of. The only one I can really think of is when this stuff started outside of O'Hare, where a taxi driver had been sitting there waiting to get a call on a fare at the airport or one of the terminals. And he saw this thing coming out of the brush. And when it was stood there and it took off, you know, he got out of his car. And the only thing he said that any type of evidence that it was there was a kind of a strong ammonia smell. Now, you know, I've only ever gotten one thing, you know, one bit of evidence like similar to that. That's the only time we got that. Now, of course, we did have one up in Woodstock, Illinois, where there were a couple footprints in the snow of this thing, and that was the creature that looked like the Bigfoot with the wings. You know?
Oh,
and
wow.
There were 3 sightings up there very close to each other. But the foot on this thing was very elongated, somewhat thin, with two toes. It was kind of bizarre.
That is strange.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal was with that, but actually one of the sightings generated into a police report that Tobias got the FOIA request. He got the report. And this person actually called and told the police officer about this. The original report was called in to me, and he was just regular people. This guy was going to the drugstore late at night. The wife was actually a local politician, so they didn't want to talk too much about it. And of course, they had people out of Chicago that were trying to interview him when somebody said they saw a Sasquatch with wings. Definitely, people wanted to talk to him, but they were trying to avoid it. And I wasn't going to talk to the press about it. So, but no, I believe him 100%. In fact, Tobias went to their house and talked to him. So, yeah. But as far as other evidence goes, well, there really hasn't been. We're not getting photographic evidence. We have had a little bit, but nothing discernible. So, well, at this point, that's what we've got.
Maybe as we're talking about here, we are sort of just waiting for our own technology to catch up. Maybe we're waiting for our own spirituality in a respect to catch up. I'm not sure what the end all will be to connect with these beings, but it could be either way or a little bit of both.
Well, I'll tell you, some of the anecdotal reports, witness reports, are coming from people who have a lot to lose if it comes out that they actually made the report. We just recently got a sighting report from a air traffic controller who had walked downstairs to take their mandatory break. And he was the only one out there that saw this thing. It was two other guys that saw it as well. We're trying to get them to come forward. We've had two pilots that have come forward, several security people, including a TSA security person who had reported seeing this. I have a friend who's an attorney here in outside of Baltimore, and he's from Chicago, and one of his relatives works for one of the airline. I'm not going to say the airline, but in a supervisory capacity. And they have access to the baggage handlers and everybody out on the tarmac. And she told me that she is getting reports left and right from people out there. And I'm trying to get her to come forward. She doesn't want me reporting any of this as of yet. But, all I can see is what she told me. And, there are a lot of people that are working at O'Hare seeing these things. Yeah. And management has really cracked down on them. They really have. They have threatened a lot of people not to talk about it. And they have named our group in particular not to talk to it. That has been told to me. So,
well, that means you guys have power.
Kind of input.
Yeah, you guys have power. You have weight. There's, to them that, there's a threat there if, you're giving the truth and you're bringing light to this, right?
Maybe, but I just think we've been fortunate to get the reports from these people who have come forward because, we've had a lot of professional people come forward over the past 4 years. We've been doing this, and a lot of them have a lot to lose, but they were affected by it. And, their feeling is we had to tell somebody, this was something we experienced that we had to tell them. And, we have kept it quiet, kept it confidential, which we've been criticized for a lot for doing that. But, that's our policy. We will not do that, because you start doing that, you're not going to get any reports. So, you got to kind of, you got to garner their support, their confidence in you. The way I look at it is when somebody has a cryptid report or anything, any type of unexplained encounter, When they call you, you become part of that encounter.
Mm-hmm.
You become part of their story. So because of that, you're responsible for, what gets out there, and, that's just the way it is. I mean, you become part of the story, and that's what we strive to do.
I think it's great that what you guys do at Fortean is create a safe space for folks to come and talk to you. And if that's all it amounts to, just having that conversation for them to have someone to release, what's inside them, what they went through in a non-judgmental, non-biased way, you guys are the first, I think. And now if you want to go further with that, you have the option to publish or to explore it further in that way. So I really appreciate what you guys do over there for that reason alone, because it really does help people. And there is healing that needs to happen, because for a lot of folks, these experiences and these sightings are very traumatic. And it doesn't necessarily mean that something really bad happened. It could be the initial shock that they go through. So it's important to be able to have that outlet for folks to go and express this again in a non-judgmental environment.
Well, you've heard Manny and Tobias and myself say this before. These witnesses for this winged humanoid phenomena in and around Chicago have some very distinct qualities about them, and I don't know why it is, but it's something that just doesn't happen with people who take cryptid reports to do the investigations. They do not embellish on the report.
Mm-hmm.
When you even try to prod them to put things in their head to make them, maybe embellish a bit on what they saw, they stick to what they originally told you. And I have never had that happen so consistently as what's going on with this investigation. They just don't embellish. So it's almost like they're imprinted from the very beginning to tell the truth. Now, these winged humanoids are not shy. They do show up fleeting. They're not around long, but they make themselves known. Now, why that is, I don't know. Of course, we've been getting all the harbinger theories about what's, everybody thinks it's like the Mothman. And, I never bought into that harbinger thing with the Silver Bridge collapse and all that anyway. But, that first year, I was having people calling me at all hours of the day and night, just people who hadn't even seen it or heard about it, and related it to the Mothman phenomena that, what's going to happen in Chicago? Do you have any idea? What's your thoughts on it? I mean, I was really getting tired of people calling me there for a while. But it was constantly going on.
I find it's very curious in that there's a lot of confusion with the Point Pleasant, Virginia Mothman and the Mothman in Chicago. And I think that must be due to possibly a misnomer, I think is the word I'm looking for, on the Chicago Mothman, because in talking to you last time, I realized that there wasn't really a connection. Why are people getting so confused when we're talking about this entity that's recent and we keep referring to some Mothman of the past?
I think the press started all that. That moniker of the Mothman kind of stuck, so that's what they were using. I was actually calling it the Chicago Phantom from the very beginning.
I like that better.
I guess that wasn't snazzy enough for the press. So, and somebody, gave it the Chicago Mothman moniker, and that kind of stuck. So, of course, when everybody starts hearing that, I had to refer to it as that as well, because that's what people recognize. What the investigation was. Oh, you're involved with the Mothman. You say Phantom, they don't even know what the hell you're talking about. But
yeah.
No, and that would, I would refer to it as that. But I personally don't think there's much correlation. Now, Tobias has different opinion, and I don't know if Manny does or not, but I don't think it's really related.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that is related is a lot of times they have red eyes. But the Mothman in Point Pleasant was more aggressive. chasing people up and down the roads. This thing isn't doing that. It had a different body style. It was kind of a thick body that looked more like a insectoid or a moth or a butterfly with those type of V wings, This thing isn't like that. For the most part, the sightings in Chicago and in in the area of Lake Michigan have been these bat gargoyle type membrane wings that with a body that was very emaciated looking.
Mm-hmm.
If you put one beside the other, I mean, you'd say, "Huh, there's a difference," because they didn't. Now, did they come from the same place? Well, maybe. I don't know where they came from. I have said from a long time ago, I always thought that the Mothman in Point Pleasant was a summoned being. I mean, I think because of the indigenous spiritual energy around that West Virginia Ordnance Works in the area itself, I think it was a summoned being, either a sentinel or some type of protector or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I think the strong energy around there kind of summoned this. I have heard of some EVP and some. I've been there myself. The energy there is very palpable. It's probably as strong there as any place I've ever been. I mean, that includes the battlefields. I just don't know why it's there. I kind of suspect it is because of the indigenous history and battles and other problems that happened in the area with colonists. And, there was a lot that happened in that Point Pleasant area. And why it's concentrated where the old ordnance works used to be at, that we don't know. But there is definitely a concentration of energy there. So, of course, with this thing being, I believe, summoned, I also believe that there's a good possibility that the winged beings in Lake Michigan, Chicago area may possibly be summoned as well. How? I don't know. Maybe it's an individual doing that. We've looked into all different theories about why these things are showing up, and we really haven't decided on it yet or seen much evidence of it yet. There are a lot of different things that could be, but as far as what happened at Point Pleasant, I think there's a big difference.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you on that, especially after talking to you on the last show. I did my own research and really dug into it. And that's pretty much what I was finding too, that, this was just a name that somehow was applied to what's happening now, this current event. And now you mentioned the media, it makes sense. They're already taking something that has some sort of emotional weight. Mothman will slap it on here for a lack of better definition. Anyway, it seemed to work out. And there you go. With the last 15 or so minutes we have here, let's talk about Dogman a little bit. I know that many people approach you on this subject, but it is very fascinating in the same way that Bigfoot is, but even maybe more so because I find that there are more Bigfoot and Sasquatch sightings out there than maybe Dogman. Maybe I'm the one under a rock. I'm not sure, but that's what I've seen so far. Right. Has Dogman been around as long as Bigfoot in respect to what people talk about? Have there ever been any discoveries within petroglyphs or anything like that of ancient civilizations indicating physical interaction?
That far back, I don't think so. I don't have it. I have not ever seen any petroglyph, cave writing, drawings, any evidence of that. Though we could be misinterpreting it. I don't know. Mm-hmm. There has been historical evidence of possible lycanthropy or some type of dogman, werewolf, whatever you want to call them, back in the old country. That's been going on for centuries over there. And when a lot of these German immigrants moved to the New World, moved to Pennsylvania, Maryland, set up farms, they already knew the lore. So was there some type of I don't know, some type of thought form activity there to where they were actually manifesting these things and identifying them as what they call a dueo? That was the original the original name for this thing in Western Maryland and Southern
Dwayyo?
Pennsylvania. Dwayyo, Dwayyo.
Okay.
Dwayyo.
I have not heard that yet.
Yeah, I've written about it in the past, but it's basically it's like an upright canine, you know. And anyway, that the whole dogman upright canine phenomena. Of course, we're all aware of the Bray Road incident and all the sightings and stuff out in Wisconsin and such. But here in Pennsylvania, we had sightings, historical sightings. Occasionally, one would pop up, and but starting in 2015, my associate Butch Witkowski and I started getting these reports out of most of the area around central Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of just springboarded since then. I think because I was just going back and collecting all the sightings recently, but looking at them right now, I think we got about 30 sightings.
Oh wow,
30 sightings since 2015. Some of them are pretty interesting. I mean, we had one not too long ago, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, in Center County, and we've had several in Center County, but at Rothrock State Park, where three couples. One guy was a Pennsylvania Game Commission employee who was actually armed, to be honest with you.
Huh.
They were walking one day in an area where a new trail had been set up, and they were just walking around enjoying the day. And one of the wives happened to turn back and saw this thing coming out of the brush onto the trail where they had just passed. And they said this thing, I mean, they described it like a 9-10 foot upright canine. And this is one thing, people think I'm crazy when I say this, but these descriptions, and if you can recall the Underworld movie series with the lichens, that's what people describe to us.
Oh wow!
I mean, those things are frightening looking.
Yeah.
And so what I did, that area, I kind of started calling it the Lichen Loop. This is an area between the Allegheny National Forest southeast into York and Lancaster County.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where, within that loop, is where most of the sightings have been taking place at. It's bizarre. I mean, we don't get them as frequently as we did, but we do get them occasionally, and they're pretty profound. They're profound sightings and encounters, and now these upright canines, and then we've had others that have kind of looked like hyenas.
Mm-hmm.
We had a sighting in Shippensburg, which isn't really that far from me, last year, where this guy who's a trash collector, he was out early in the morning, and he saw this thing in the field with 4 legs, and he thought it was a cow until he got a better look at it. He was sitting in a truck as it started getting lighter, and this thing is out there, and he thought he had originally seen a cow, and he looked and he said, when I looked at it, it looked like a hyena with a wolf face. And he said, when this thing took off, it ran at the quickest, fastest speed he'd ever seen. So I don't know what the hell he saw, but we've had similar sightings. That guy I told you about who was in the deer stand with the 30-06, that's what he saw. This thing was a quadruped, and but it looked like a muscular hyena with a wolf head.
That's
and he
crazy.
said it was huge. And he had this gun, and he wasn't going to shoot at it. He said, he told me, he said, what the hell was I going to do if I unloaded the clip in this thing and it ran up a tree after me?
It's got
I kind of sympathize with that,
Yeah.
So so that's what we're running into. The stories are interesting, but there are certain parts of the state where most of the activity is taking place at.
Very interesting that it's sort of centralized in different areas now. I mean, we're aware of pockets of high energy, to give you a very topical.
Well, there's a lot of that around in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania's got a ton of areas like that. There's hot spots.
Hotspots. That's a great way to put it. I was going to bring up something like the Bridgewater Triangle, or something along those natures.
I mean, that's there's a lot of energy there for whatever reason. Is it geological? Is it spiritual? Is it it could be a lot of things. The Chestnut Ridge out in western Pennsylvania is probably one area that has more freaky things going on than any place in the state. But there are parts of the state that have a lot of strange activity. And where I'm living at here in south central Pennsylvania, Adams and York County, we have a lot of crazy stuff here. We've had winged humanoids. I had my winged humanoid encounter just north of here, a couple miles north of where I live now, back in '88. Yeah, I mean, it looked just like what people are describing in Chicago. And that, which seems kind of synergetic. I mean, am I getting these reports because of what I experienced back then? I talked to Pass about that, and I don't know. So, it's weird.
Incredible, man.
Weird seems to. I seem to attract weird. I mean, I've had a lot of people tell me that, but you wonder sometimes.
I really think that there are some people who do attract the weird, so to say. I really do. And I think there's a purpose for that. I think there's a reason. But something I think you mentioned a little bit, you touched on this in answering one of the questions here, but I wanted to ask you if there was any solid evidence to support the idea that there might be a connection between Dogman and the traditional werewolf, perhaps werewolves born out of Dogman sightings in ancient times. What do you think?
Well, werewolf. I mean, what's a werewolf? Is it a shapeshifter? Is it lycanthropy? Is it something other than that? Is it actually a human that transformed into a snarling, raging beast at night that feeds on people and whatever? I don't know. I mean, a lot of folklore behind that. I don't know how true that really is. I get reports from people all the time that say they saw a dog man or a werewolf. Well, what is it? I can only go by what they're telling me. Many times when I'll write about it and report it, I'm describing it as something not what they told me. I very rarely I come out and say, there was a werewolf. Well, werewolf has its own connotations. I mean, you start talking about werewolf, you start talking about really supernatural. I mean, you're talking about vampires and everything else. Yeah. So, I can't really say that there are werewolves, though, people growing up watching horror movies, that's probably the first thing comes to their mind. They probably never heard of an upright canine or a dog man or anything like that.
Oh, I'm certain of it.
Yeah. So that's what I get. So, no, I don't think there's any connection. I think the whole upright canine dog man thing, for the most part, is like I said before with cryptids. They may be interdimensional. Are they an actual indigenous species? I doubt it. The ones that were seen around here, many times they had like a supernatural aspect to it. I've had people actually telling me that looked like they had a glow coming off of them, or
I've heard
some
that
kind of weird aura or something like that. Yeah. So, I mean, is that part of what they really are, or are they something that's just here for a certain amount of time? I don't know.
That's a very good point, and something to certainly explore. We're going to wrap up in about 5 minutes here, but I wanted to ask you very quickly, is there any bit of advice you could give someone who was just starting out in the field of cryptozoology, and are there any cautions they should be aware of stepping into this?
Well, first of all, I think if you're going to go out there, first of all, you're going to talk to people, give them the benefit of the doubt, first of all.
Good note.
Don't discourage it. When you're going out there looking for something, most of the times you're not going to find what you're looking for. I mean, it's all happenstance for the most part. Don't get discouraged. Take good notes. Discuss with other people who you trust. Don't buy into everything that everybody tells you that's enough, that, you know, classifies themselves as a cryptozoologist or investigator or anything like that. I mean, you got to use a little bit of common sense. You got to be skeptical to a degree. But like I said, when you talk to people, give them the benefit of the doubt until you disprove what they're telling you.
Good point. And I very well said, honestly. That was great. Thank you so much. Lon, I'm going to wrap up for the moment. If you'd like to stick around, I'm going to put you off backstage. I'll say my proper goodbyes off camera. If you have to go, I understand. Otherwise, I'll join you in just a moment. But everybody, I want to let you know that you can find Lon Strickler at phantomsandmonsters.com, Arcane Radio, and you can find his Arcane Radio show on YouTube now. And
yeah,
I'll put
Beyond
that
Explanation.
link.
Beyond Explanation is the YouTube channel where we're doing all kinds of things over there. Small documentaries. Some of the encounter reports are being produced into small videos, and of course, all the Arcane Radio shows are archived there and done live there. And we've got other people doing more shows there. Amy Boo, Jack Carey, Ron Murphy's going to be coming on with us. We're expanding it, so there's going to be a lot of variety there.
Well, I'm excited to see what you guys cook up, because I know that you've been very solid in what you've been presenting thus far for, well, at least since 2005, we'll say. And that's not a bad run, to be honest with you. It's absolutely fascinating. Lon, thank you so much for being here with us again. And I really appreciate this. I'm going to put you backstage for the moment, but I will be back in just a moment, okay?
Okay, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. I've been waiting to talk to Lon Strickler again. I had such a fantastic time with him the first time around, and I wanted to, again, have a little bit more of an intimate conversation with him one-on-one, and I feel that that's exactly what we did tonight, and I've learned a lot. I hope that you have as well. And as you can see, he's a well of information, knowledge, and experience based on his research and his own curiosity. So what more could you ask for? Please go and check out Richie G at GoofOn. He is on at 10 o'clock Eastern time, 7 o'clock Pacific. He has a hell of a show. He's going to be doing a live broadcast this evening. He did broadcast the rocket launch from SpaceX earlier today. That was pretty fascinating. So go and check him out. Please also check out Third Phase. We are doing something very interesting over on this channel, analyzing different videos that are current, bringing the most up-to-date news in the ufology world. And this is, of course, headed by Third Phase of Moon. And I would suggest that you go and check them out as well, because, well, things start somewhere. And a lot of this information, the way they gather in terms of boots on the ground research, this is where it's coming from, guys. So go and check out Third Phase of Moon. Go check out Third Phase, and go check out GoofOn. And please support, like, and subscribe to DarkHour Paranormal. You want to donate? There's a link in the bottom of the description there for PayPal. I appreciate you very much. Every cent goes back to the show. And we will be back, hopefully, on Friday, a couple days from now, with Jonathan C. Martin, who is an extraterrestrial channeler in the way that Daryl Anka does it, having the entire energy come right through him and poof, right out into manifestation for everybody. So that will be very fun, and I hope that he can join us. I will let you know if there is a change. In the meantime, I'm not going to play the outro again tonight, because I want to get back and thank my guest. But thank you very much for being here tonight, everyone. It's been a fantastic time. Enjoy the rest of your evening and stay informed, knowledgeable, and magical. We'll see you next time on DarkHour Paranormal.